Hey guys, welcome back to Zane Customs. In this week's episode, we're going to be sculpting the Phantom from Minecraft. So as per usual, I started this sculpt off on my iPad in an app called Forger. And it starts off pretty basic. I just started with a sphere and pulled out a tail and some wings. I'm just adding in basic details here and there. But as you can see, or as you will see with this sculpt, I go back and forth a lot, kind of changing things. Mainly the face. I took a long time for me to get something I was happy with face wise, and you'll see I'll also go over to Google and look up a lot of reference photos just because I had a hard time with this sculpt. I went too bird like, I think, at first. Like here he almost has a beak and looks like a bird or like some sort of dragon thing, but he kind of reminds me of a manta ray or a stingray, so I wanted something more like that. But stingrays don't really have a head like the Phantom does, so I had to include that as well. So I go back and forth a lot on this whole sculpt, changing things, but mainly with the head. You'll see I try quite a bit of different things before I land on something I'm happy with. Another thing you'll see me struggling with throughout this whole sculpt, especially once it gets put into ZBrush, is the wings. And if you've seen my previous videos, I did the Ender Dragon, was one of my first videos. And I also struggled with the wings on that because you want, or at least I want, the wings to look thin enough that they're like actual wings, because although dragons aren't real, if you see any images, or like they're kind of like bat wings. Bat wings are thin, and that's what I'm going for here. I want them to be just like a thin membrane. But it's hard to do that with ZBrush, because if you have something too thin and you go to remesh or dynamesh or anything like that, it can cause a lot of problems and a lot of weird geometry. Along with Forger, it's hard to do that because sometimes if you're going too thin on one side will actually poke through into the other if you're flattening, and that just led to a whole mess of issues. So you'll see quite a bit I work on the head and the wings, just to try and get those to look good, but those were definitely a struggle. So at this point, I ended up with a pretty boxy head, which fits with my whole Minecraft homage aesthetic that I'm going for. And I was actually quite happy with it, because I feel like everything I was doing before almost gave too much emotion to the Phantom, or it was like you saw earlier, it looked like a bird or something. So I ended up being quite happy with this, because another problem I was making the mouth too big. And the Phantom here, you can't even really see that it has a mouth. I didn't even know it has a mouth until I found some images of it with an open mouth. So that's what I was trying to do here, trying to hide the jaw kind of underneath and inside the head a little bit, so it wasn't super obvious. So for those of you who have played Minecraft, you'll know what this creature is, but for those of you out there that haven't, in the game of Minecraft, when it comes to nighttime, you can get in bed and you'll just sleep and you'll just basically skip through the night. But if you don't want to do that, you can stay awake, but there's monsters that come out at night, and if you stay awake for enough nights in a row, these Phantoms will show up. I don't know how long, it's like 4 or 5 days you stay up through the night, and then these will show up. But I kind of took that as an inspiration for making this mob a little bit more creepy than some of the other ones, because I kind of think of it as like a nightmare. It comes out at night and plagues you, and it'll fly up in the sky and dive bomb down and attack you. So I wanted to make this sculpt a little bit more creepy. So even though the actual model does have bones kind of on its back and through its wings, I tried to highlight those more and make them look more creepy in a sense. I don't know if that makes sense, but I just wanted this sculpt in particular to look more creepy than other Minecraft sculpts I have done in the past, and you'll see some more of that throughout the rest of this video. One thing I ended up doing with the sculpt that I felt like helped kind of drive home the more creepy nature of this sculpt was excessive detailing. And it's just excessive in the sense that a lot of my other Minecraft sculpts are pretty simple. Like if you look at the skeleton, I'm happy with how he turned out, but he's pretty basic. He has some light texture going on in his bones to like cracks and things like that, but there's not a lot of tiny details, where when you look at this Phantom, he's got wrinkles and all these other tiny details going on throughout his body, which is partially just due to the nature of what the creature is. A skeleton, bones, I mean, they do have cracks and divots here and there, but they're relatively smooth objects, whereas a whole creature like almost reptilian or amphibian creature that I'm going for here, it's going to have a lot more details, scales, bumps, all those things. But along with that, I did take it farther in certain areas to try and drive home the idea of a more realistic, creepy monster. But to go back to the excessive detail remark I made, I'm also just getting better. I feel like I set myself this challenge of doing one Minecraft sculpt a week, and I have some other projects that I'll eventually make videos about later that take longer than a week to produce. But for the foreseeable future, I'm just trying to pump out one Minecraft sculpt a week, and I feel like that has helped me a lot, especially with ZBrush, because I've used Forger for a year and a half or so, and I know it pretty well, but ZBrush is new to me, and I'm definitely getting better with it, and I feel like part of that, and part of sculpting in general, is this challenge I set myself of trying to pump out a new video every week. I definitely feel like that's helped me get better as far as sculpting goes. But also there's little things too, because like I first got ZBrush, and ZBrush has a very good texture brush selection, so I just figured, oh, I'll just do all my texturing with that. But the more I've worked with it, the more I've realized those are kind of good for subtle details. Some big details it works with, but a lot of subtle. So anything big I try to do earlier on, or I just do myself, even though it takes time and it's repetitious. It's fun, and it looks a lot better rather than just relying on textures, because you might not even find the right texture you want on ZBrush anyway. As you can see on the chest of the Phantom, he's got almost like muscle tendons connecting from his chest to his wings, and I kind of took inspiration for that from the actual underbelly of the Phantom. He's got some stripes going across his chest into his wings, and they're not necessarily like red or anything, but they're a little purplish, which I thought, you know, could possibly be something like a muscle tendon or something like that. But you see here, I put it in ZBrush, and this is what I'm talking about, where I start having issues with the meshes because it was so thin. So I have to go in and fix that and remesh and go back and forth. And it's just, doing wings is always a hard process for me. I'm getting better at it, but I wouldn't say I'm necessarily great at it yet. And here you can see I'm masking off the very tips of the wings, and then I'm cutting it away just to try and give it a more of a tattered look. And then you'll see I'll actually go in with a cylinder and cut some holes into the wings themselves. Just if you actually look at the Phantom, he does have tattered wings. He doesn't necessarily have holes, but I just thought that would kind of help add to the look of the creepy, tattered monster. At this stage, I've done pretty much all the major detail work in Forger, so I'm just kind of going through and cleaning things up. Like I said here, I'm cutting some holes in the wings, just doing some final details. Cutting holes in the wings, something I can do in ZBrush, but I can't do in Forger, so I kind of have to do it here. But other than that, mostly for the rest of this video, it's just kind of cleaning up, doing some finished work, and then going into painting. And like I did say earlier, that I try to do most of the texture work earlier on now, and I'm trying to do that without texture brushes, but I still will do some texture with the texture brushes. For example, I don't want to go crazy doing a lot of texture on the wings because they're so thin, and I just feel like it would look weird. But using the texture brushes, you can just get a light, thin texture, kind of consistent throughout the body. And now I'm hopping into painting, and with this one, if you've seen the thumbnail or early in the video when I showed you the finished product, this kind of is going to look a little bit purplish, but I do actually paint the Phantom itself blue, and then I do the muscle tendons underneath in a pinkish kind of purplish, and do the bones all gray and all that. I follow the actual color scheme, but it's once I add lighting in to the scene, the lighting will affect the actual color on the sculpt itself, which sometimes sucks, but I am generally happy with the way it looks. Like, the bones end up kind of looking more yellow because there's a yellow light hitting it, but I'm happy with that. And then you'll see I'm doing something I do with pretty much every Minecraft sculpt I have. I'm going in and re-importing my Enderman, my skeleton, my spider, just all of my previous Minecraft sculpts to get a good reference for size. And there's going to be some differences. Like, I'm sure if I went to the Minecraft wiki, I could find exact measurements, how tall all these mobs are supposed to be. But I just look up images off Google and then try to get it similar. And here if you buy the sculpt off Etsy, it's actually going to be 2 phantoms kind of flying on a little pedestal. So I'm just duplicating another one and trying to put them in a different pose. And when you mask off and then rotate one part of the body, and the other part of the body obviously is staying because it's masked, it creates some weird geometry, and that's what you can see here, all that kind of weird boxes. So I'm just going through and fixing that up. And right here, this is kind of what I was talking about early on in the video, about him not having much of a mouth. He does have a mouth, but as you can see when it's closed, his bottom jaw is kind of hidden under the lip of his mouth, or his upper lip, I guess. But since I'm having 2 phantoms in this kind of diorama, I wanted to do one that looked like it was lunging down to attack somebody and maybe screeching at him or something, and then having another one behind it, kind of just to represent in the game how you could have phantoms flying up in the sky, and then every once in a while they'll rocket down and try to attack you. That's kind of why I wanted to have 2 in here, even though I think every time I've come across them in the game there's been 3 of them in the sky, so I could have done that, but I only really needed 2 just to kind of get my point across. You'll also notice that I turned the colors off for this part of the sculpt, because after I reposed them, it's kind of hard to tell imperfections in your sculpt when there's so much color and light affecting it. So it's nice for me to turn the colors off and resculpt them and get them looking good, and then I can go back and re-add color. And the second time I'm adding color to this one, it goes a lot faster because I already know how he's going to look, what colors I'm using and all that, and I can just reference off the first model, so it goes a lot faster. But once I get him colored up again, then I'm going to go ahead and I got a base set, and then I'm just using these little cylinders and extending them out, and they'll basically just be pins for them to sit on. So if you buy the sculpt, those little cylinders will be clear, just to give the best effect possible for flying. I don't want it to be super obvious that there's something under him, but it is a flying creature that doesn't have legs or nothing, so I couldn't really have it perching, and they never do that in the game. They're always flying, so that's why I went with having those little support rods underneath. And then what you can see here is I'm just going in and exporting some images for my Etsy and my YouTube, and the YouTube thumbnail is one of them I rendered out here. But I'll throw up some of those images that I rendered out to show you guys the finished product. I'm also curious to know whether you guys prefer this look for my Minecraft sculpts, just a more almost darker, grittier, but a more heavily detailed sculpt, versus like my skeleton, where it was more detailed and more realistic than Minecraft, but it was more simplistic in comparison. I'd just like to know what you guys prefer. I honestly like both of them. I don't mind going either way. Just let me know in the comments what you guys think. Alright, to everybody that's made it this far in the video, I really appreciate it. I think my channel is at 18 subscribers now, which I'm thrilled about. I mean, I could be having 0 subscribers and I'd still be making these videos, so I'm just appreciative that some people enjoy it or willing to watch it. To anybody out there that watches my videos but isn't subscribed, please consider it. I would greatly appreciate it. I also have a Instagram account and an Etsy account. They're both at Zane Customs. So check those out if you're interested, and thank you for watching.